Welcome to Vote 2017. I'm your host, Teresa Whipple, and today we have Ann McMurray in the studio, and she is running for Edmonds School District Board of Directors Position 2. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Now we're going to talk a little bit about your background and why you are running for re-election, of course, but also just tell us more about yourself.
Sure. I came to the district in September of 1990, so I've been here a while. And being new, the first week I wound up at a parent meeting at my kids' school, and they were looking for someone to go into an organization called the Citizen Planning Committee. It was put together by the superintendent at the time, Dr. Benzel, and it was representatives, parent representatives from all of the different schools in the district to kind of provide that parent, that community voice for district decisions. And so being new, I raised my hand, and within a very short amount of time, I attended my first Citizen Planning Committee meeting, and then spent 15 years actually on the Citizen Planning Committee working with district level issues, providing feedback, providing both kind of a community overview as well as what my people from the schools that I was dealing with, how they felt about things. And so in 2005, the person who was in Director Position 2 was actually moving out of the area. So some district officials, knowing my interest and my longevity in the district, asked if I would consider putting my name in the hat to fill out that particular election cycle. I did. I was chosen, and I've been on the board since 2005, but involved in the district since 1990. And the reason that I do it, I mean, of course, first it was because I was involved with my kids' school and really wanted to be a part of things, but also I stayed on the board and stayed active because I really feel like if you benefit from the community, it's important for you to give back to the community. And one of the ways that I could do that was in a very community-oriented position, which is school board.
Okay, that's great. And do you have an education background of any kind? Or?
No, I started out as a parent volunteer, room mom, member of the different parent-teacher organizations, president of the Music Boosters. I mean, really
all of the assorted things that we all do as parents. Yeah.
Exactly. That's really my background. Okay. It's not that I have any sort of formal training in it. It's just because I love kids, and I really enjoyed and benefited from my public education, and I really believe in the concept of public education, and just wanted to be a part of continuing the strong presence of public education in the community myself. It's one way that I could serve.
Okay. And you're running for re-election because you have more things to do.
You know, back in, right when I first got on the board, we made a decision to become part of the group of school boards and school organizations that were suing the state in the McCleary decision. And for a period of some very rough years, we had to cut over $40 million. Just kept chipping away year after year after year because of the loss of state funding. And so one of the reasons that I really wanted to continue and run again was because we just haven't seen what the end of that is going to look like. We have some changes, we have a state budget, but there are so many unknowns and there are so many funding unknowns that I really wanted to be able to see that through and have a voice in how the McCleary decision and the legislative action based on that work their way through down to the individual district level.
Yeah, and that's a good follow-up question because I think a lot of us who are out there reading about the results of the McCleary work in the legislature aren't really clear, and it seems like maybe even the school boards aren't really clear on what that's going to look like. Are you going to get the money you need?
We don't know, because one of the actions that took place during this last go-round was a change in wages and compensations for teachers, which in the Edmonds School District represents about 86% of every dollar. So we're in a position to really not know necessarily what that's going to look like. The legislature has taken action, but it's going to take a while for that to work down through each individual system to figure out what does that mean for us. And the other component is they're changing the way the levies work and the percentage of monies that the school district can obtain from local voters. And so, and they are going to put in to place different rules and regulations about what enhancements are. So we don't really know what that's going to look like. So it's created, even though there's money coming into the system, we don't know what the strings are going to be, and we don't really know yet how that's going to affect our local district. So there's a lot of uncertainty, not only at the district level, but at the school-based level. We have teachers who are paid out of state funds. We have teachers paid out of grant money. We have teachers paid out of federal money, and how all of that is going to work together still has not been decided. So there's a good deal of kind of action and foment kind of what is that going to be for us. So we're just going to have to see how it all works out. And then we also haven't seen what the Supreme Court is going to do based upon what the legislative action is, because the news organization has been given the authority by the Supreme Court to kind of vet the state plan and state response, and then they will put together their analysis of, is it meeting the Supreme Court guidelines, is it not? Then the state will have 30 days to do a rebuttal. So it's going to be a while before we really kind of see what all that is going to look like. And so I guess the biggest thing to say is stay tuned.
Right.
We're all just kind of waiting to see what that's going to look like.
It sounds like it even could end up in the legislature again.
You know, I don't know what the Supreme Court is going to do. If they look at the plan and decide, okay, this meets what we had in mind, our intent, well, then we'll just have to figure out the details. If they decide, no, this isn't what we wanted, I'm assuming they will go back to the state and indicate what changes that they might want, and then we're into response and back and forth. So it's been so long since we started. It's been I don't know, it's been over a decade. And to think that we're going through something that's so vital, which is the funding of the education of our kids, this long, is really kind of disheartening. And I'm sure people who aren't, they're living their lives and going to soccer and doing all the things that they're doing, they're excited about school starting up again, and to have to worry about this and put this on their plate is just one more thing a lot of people just really don't have the time to process.
Right.
It's what they expect us to do.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's talk about, you and I were talking about this a little bit before the cameras were rolling, and I think a major issue that the board is starting to deal with now is the issue of diversity in the Edmonds School District.
Oh yes, it is really exciting, because our district is moving from a majority white district to a majority ethnic minority, a majority minority
Right,
district.
yeah.
If you want to look at it that way, of course, that is represented by multiple different minorities who are really coming to be a part of our community here in the Edmonds area and in South Snohomish County, and they're bringing their children in, and we're having the opportunity then to present to them public education for a lot of these people in a way that they have never seen before. It didn't operate that way in the countries that they came from, and so or perhaps they're coming from different areas in the United States that might be more homogeneous, and so now all of a sudden they're coming into a very different situation. So it's very exciting to be a part of that, but it brings its own challenges, and one of the obvious challenges is the number of languages that are spoken in our schools, and the energy, the support it takes to try to work with these kids, to these English language learners, to be able to bring them up to a fluency that allows them really to dig in and get benefit out of the educational program that we're providing. So it's a huge challenge, but it's a wonderful opportunity, because what we get to do is we get to hear different perspectives, maybe perspectives we've never heard before, and we get to have those perspectives in precious little bodies and beautiful little faces. And it's, like I say, I look at it as a wonderful opportunity to once again show how diversity is a strength, not only in our community, but in our country.
And I think that, probably the challenges, which you can, I'm sure, talk about a little bit more in terms of just perspectives. People have kind of been used to approaching a lot of learning in a certain way from a different, kind of more of a white majority perspective,
Yes.
and that's requiring, I'm sure, some reflection and some shifts. But let's talk just a little bit about something that you and I were also chatting about earlier. At Madrona School in Edmonds,
Yes.
there was a couple of incidents last year. One where there were some racial slurs that were painted on parts of the building, and also some swastikas. And I think it raised some kind of angst among the parents about kind of what this means. Is this representative of our community? And I know the district has been addressing that and trying to develop some good responses, but do you feel like, that's the kind of thing that you have to be hyper vigilant about in terms of how you treat those kinds of issues?
Yes, I really think so. I mean, they were terrible. I saw the pictures and my heart just sank to think that that our kids have to look at that and have to be a part of that. To me, school should be a place that's safe and that is inviting, and where those sorts of things just don't happen for kids. But we live in a world where people, unfortunately, do those sorts of things. And as a district, we need to be able to address them quickly, address them comprehensively, and address them in such a way that especially if there's any particular groups that were targeted, that they feel like they are protected, and that we are going to address what happened in a way that makes them feel safe. Sometimes I think in a district and organization, you may have procedures in place that you think are sufficient to address the issue. But when you hear from the people who are actually affected, what you learn is there were some things that we could have done more quickly. There were some things that we could have done differently. And so, unfortunately, since this has happened, we are trying to turn it into a learning opportunity of what do we do. I would like to be able to say that such a thing will never happen again, but I can't. So our obligation as a district is to make sure that we address it appropriately, learn what we need to. And so we're going to be doing some community meetings, and we're going to be putting together some language that's clearer for school administrators, that outlines a very specific procedure of what do you do when, what steps do you take, what is first, what is second, what is third, so that we don't leave that so much to maybe the discretion of a district employee or an administrator, but we're going to be providing a structure for what do you do, and we're going to incorporate the things that we have learned, both in our own internal review and also what we're hearing from the community, to make sure that we address these issues. I hope they never happen again, but if they do, in a way that's more responsive and speaks more clearly to the communities who are affected.
And as long as we're on the topic of issues that have drawn some community attention, let's also talk about something else that seemed to generate some attendance at school board meetings last year, and that was crumb rubber infill that has been placed in some of the playfields in the district when it's needed replacing. And the issue basically is there were some community members and parents who were concerned about the safety,
Yes.
health and environmental effects of that. And the science is still kind of, the jury's out on the science. There's been some studies done, but nothing has been reported conclusively in terms of that. But the issue seems to be not going away.
Right.
There is actually a ban in the city of Edmonds right now on any crumb rubber fields. Wondering what you're thinking about. You were one of the folks who had voted to support the installation of the crumb rubber.
Yes.
What would you like to share in terms of your thinking about that for those who may not have understood it? And also, what is your thinking about what the board may do if you can predict that in the future?
Sure. I think about it, the way I approached the crumb rubber issue is kind of similar to the way I approached another controversial issue, if you want to call it that, of charter schools, which is in both of those cases you have a very vocal group of community members who see the issue a certain way. For example, the community members who are against crumb rubber fields, really they feel like it comes with a heightened safety component for their kids. The people who are for charter schools, for example, they really feel like a personalized, smaller educational model should surely produce better results for kids. In both cases, there's perceptions that are very well-meaning, and the individuals that spoke, they were heartfelt, and they really they shared their passion and their reasons for why they believed what they believed. But what I needed to do was look from the evidence point of view. So if I start with the charter schools, when I look at the evidence, and you even though you may have some outliers where there are some charter schools across the country that are doing astonishing, amazing work with children, when you look overall, I just don't see the evidence that charter schools overall produce quantifiably better outcomes for kids. And so for crumb rubber, when I looked, we did our own internal study that showed no heightened health concern from the literature that was reviewed. Then Verdant Health Condition did a second study because they partnered with us on the fields at the old Woodward campus. And then the state has recently done its own study. They did a revision in April of 2017, and they looked specifically at whether the that University of Washington cohort that from the women's soccer team. What they found is that, I mean, and people can go to the state website. What they found was that the rates of cancer in that cohort were not statistically different than what would be found in the general Washington state population, and their recommendation was that people continue to play soccer irrespective of the infill material. So I voted to continue with crumb rubber because it's durable, because it has all-weather capabilities, it has cushioning, and it has a cost-effective price point. As for what would happen in the future, the market is always responding to consumer concerns, and we will continue to look at different infill materials. If we find one that has a track record, a proven track record that has the same positives as the crumb rubber, then I can only speak for myself. Then I would vote to do something else. And as I say, I cannot speak for anybody else. But I found the other board members, as we've talked about them, I found them to be very reasonable, and I would certainly advocate in my own way to look at alternative fills that might become available.
Okay, and of course, one thing my understanding is that there is still some research out there that is being talked about from the Environmental Protection Agency that may or may not see the light of day at some point. We don't really know what might be happening there, but I know that they've talked about having that come out, and so that might change people's minds
There are
as well.
cities and states that continue to do their own research.
Right.
That will then come out and be available to everyone to look at the results.
Sure. Okay, very good. Tell me what the one thing in your years on the board that you are most proud of.
I think the one thing that I would be the most proud of is to help the district be flexible to address the changing funding sources, funding situations, and demographics. I really think that because education is changing, the country's changing. When I came on in 1990, who knew what the World Wide Web was? We have seen such a massive amount of change, and I think the thing that I am most proud of is to be able to help the district maneuver through that and still provide a quality education for our kids.
Okay, that's something to be proud of, for sure. All right, well, now is the time for you to be able to deliver a message to the voters directly, and I invite you to do that.
Well, I would just say thank you very much for taking the time to listen to this, to be civically engaged. Often in this busy, fast-paced world, people tend to sometimes just get that voter pamphlet and they don't pay a lot of attention to certain races. And so I just thank you for taking the time, for looking through the voter pamphlet, to really research and to think about not only my particular school board race, but all of them together, because I think that that voting and being active in everything from the presidential elections all the way down to school board and fire commissioners and water districts is really the way that we participate in the democracy that we are blessed to have in this country. So I just want to say thank you, and I hope you'll consider voting for me when if you're in my district.
Okay, well, Ann McMurray, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, I wish you the best of luck in November.
Thank you.